There are periods in life when you stop wanting to be visible, not because you dislike people, not because you want to disappear completely, but because something in you has grown tired of being exposed to constant attention, interaction, and interpretation. You begin to prefer solitude. You feel more at ease working from home, staying close to familiar spaces, and keeping your life small, quiet, and private. Even simple social contact can start to feel like too much, as if being noticed asks for an energy you no longer have. For some people, this feeling appears after a deep inner change. Sometimes it comes after burnout, sometimes after what feels like an awakening or the quiet collapse of an old identity. You look at the life you were living, the person you were trying to be, and something no longer fits. Then a thought begins to form inside you. I don't want to be seen anymore. Carl Jung would not treat this feeling as something shallow or insignificant. He understood that when a person begins withdrawing from outer life, it can mean many things. Sometimes it is a retreat born from pain, but sometimes it is part of a deeper psychological process where the soul is pulling energy away from appearances and redirecting it inward. There are at least two very different reasons a person may feel this way. On the surface, they can look almost identical. In both cases, someone becomes quieter, more private, less willing to present themselves so openly to the world. But inwardly, the meaning is very different. The first possibility is that not wanting to be seen is part of integration. Jung wrote about the persona, the social face you develop in order to move through the world. The persona is not fake in a simple sense. It has a purpose, it helps you adapt, it helps you belong, it allows you to function in family life, work, friendship, and society. But the problem begins when you become too identified with it. When the role you learn to play slowly replaces the deeper truth of who you are. You may have spent years being known in one particular way, the dependable one, the polite one, the strong one, the thoughtful one, the successful one, the one who always seemed composed. Maybe you became skilled at being what others expected, and after a while that version of you became almost automatic. Then something shifts. After deep reflection, suffering, inner work, or a spiritual opening, the old personality can begin to feel tiring to carry. You notice that certain ways of speaking, behaving, and relating no longer feel alive. You can still perform them, but something in you resists. The self the world recognizes is no longer the self you feel yourself becoming. This is one reason being seen can start to feel uncomfortable, because often what people see is not you as you are now, but you as you once were. Their recognition pulls you back toward an older arrangement of the psyche. They respond to the role, the mask, the identity that used to organize your life, and even when they mean well, it can feel strangely disorienting. You leave the interaction feeling as though you had to step back into a shape that no longer belongs to you. Jung called the deeper movement beyond the persona individuation. This is the process of becoming more whole, more inwardly aligned, more rooted in the self rather than in social approval. It is not a process of becoming perfect. It is a process of becoming real, and becoming real often requires a period of withdrawal, not as punishment, not as failure, but as a necessary turning inward. When the psyche begins reorganizing itself, solitude can become a kind of inner workshop. In silence, things start to surface that were hidden beneath the noise of ordinary life. You begin to notice your contradictions more clearly. You begin to see what was left out of the personality you presented to others. This is where Jung's idea of the shadow becomes important. The shadow contains the parts of you that were pushed aside in order to maintain your acceptable identity. Feelings you were not supposed to have, needs you learned to hide. Anger, envy, dependency, fear, grief, sensitivity, even unlived creativity. The more polished the persona, the more likely it is that important parts of the self were left behind. So when you step back from visibility, you may not be retreating from life. You may be meeting those forgotten parts, and this encounter changes you. You begin to realize that what looked like confidence may have covered insecurity. What looked like selflessness may have contained fear of rejection. What looked like independence may have concealed loneliness. These realizations can make you quieter, not because you are broken, but because you are no longer interested in presenting a simplified version of yourself. That is why this kind of solitude can feel almost sacred. You are not merely hiding, you are listening. You are allowing the old identity to loosen without rushing to replace it with a new one. In this stage, privacy is not always fear. Sometimes it is protection for something still taking shape. The old self has become too narrow, but the deeper self has not fully emerged. So you wait. You stay close to what feels inwardly true. You become more careful about where your energy goes and how much of yourself you offer to the world. So sometimes when you feel that you no longer want to be seen, it does not mean you are disappearing. It may mean you are stepping back from what was never fully you, so that something more honest can begin to live through you. If this resonates so far, type "I am becoming more honest" in the comments below. Sometimes the first step is simply recognizing that your withdrawal is not emptiness but a message from within. And if these words are meeting something real in you, stay with me, because there is another side to this feeling and it deserves the same kind of care. Sometimes not wanting to be seen is not part of integration. Sometimes it is the psyche trying to protect itself from pain. It does not yet know how to carry in the open. From the outside it can look very similar. You become quieter, more hidden, less willing to enter social spaces. You keep your life narrow and controlled. You avoid situations where you might be noticed too much, asked too much, or revealed too much. But inwardly, something different is happening. Instead of moving toward the self, you may be moving away from wounded parts of yourself that still feel unbearable to expose. Jung understood that the psyche is not only shaped by growth but also by defense. It develops ways of protecting itself when shame, rejection, humiliation, or emotional injury have cut too deeply. In that sense, withdrawal is not weakness. It is often an intelligent adaptation. The mind learns that visibility can hurt. To be seen can mean to be misunderstood, judged, dismissed, compared, or quietly abandoned. And after enough of those experiences, hiding can begin to feel safer than participating. You may not even think of it as fear at first. It can feel more like fatigue, like disinterest, like a simple preference for privacy. But underneath that preference, there may be an old memory in the nervous system. When I was visible, something in me got hurt. That is why some forms of invisibility carry a heavy emotional tone. There is no spaciousness in them, no quiet ripening, no sense of inner gathering. There is only contraction. You stay out of sight, not because something true is forming, but because exposure feels dangerous. You shrink your life to avoid being touched where you are still tender. This can happen through shame. Shame is one of the most silencing experiences. It does not merely say "I made a mistake." It says there is something wrong with me. And when shame becomes deep enough, a person may start hiding not only their flaws but their very presence. To be seen at all can feel like a risk. It can also happen through unresolved trauma. When the psyche has been overwhelmed, it often becomes cautious, hyper-apore, and protective. Social contact may feel draining, not because you are changing spiritually, but because your system has learned to associate exposure with danger. In that state, avoidance can seem like peace, when in reality, it is only a reduction of threat. Past rejection can have a similar effect. If important parts of you were dismissed early in life, your feelings, your sensitivity, your needs, your truth, then invisibility can begin to feel like the only place where you do not have to negotiate your existence. You tell less, show less, risk less, not because you have nothing to offer, but because something in you expects misattunement before connection. There is also the quieter burden of self-doubt. After enough confusion, disappointment, or failed attempts to be known, you may begin to lose trust in your own way of being. Then hiding becomes a way of avoiding the ache of exposure. Better to remain unseen than to be seen and confirmed in your worst fear that no one will truly understand you. Still, this is not the whole story, because even outside of deep wounding, many people reach a point where social life begins to feel empty in a new way. You start noticing how much energy went into maintaining a persona, how much of your life was shaped by approval, politeness, achievement, or expectation. You become more sensitive to shallow interactions, more aware of how often people meet each other through roles rather than reality. The nervous system, after years of pressure, begins asking for quiet, not performance, not stimulation, quiet. And awakening can intensify this. When old motivations begin to fall away, the desire to be admired, included, validated, or constantly engaged may lose its hold. What once kept you moving socially no longer carries the same force. This can feel confusing because the world often treats visibility as health and withdrawal as failure, but the psyche does not move by those rules. Sometimes it needs less noise in order to hear itself. So the desire not to be seen can mean very different things depending on where you are in your inner life. Sometimes it is healing, a movement toward wholeness, a loosening of the false self so something more real can emerge. Sometimes it is protection, a retreat organized by shame, fear, exhaustion, or old hurt. Neither path should be judged too quickly. What matters is not whether you are visible or invisible. The deeper question is whether your withdrawal is making you more honest with yourself, or only more hidden from your own pain. And maybe this is the question worth sitting with. When you no longer want to be seen, what in you is asking for space, and what in you is asking to be understood at last? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your words may help someone else feel less alone in what they're carrying. And subscribe to Fractal Wisdom for more reflections like this, where we explore the hidden movements of the psyche with honesty and depth.